Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Lord's Firesides. I'm Clive Gilson, the story guy, and I'm delighted, as ever, that you've stopped by. Today we're telling a classic Greek tale called The Woodfolk. It's from my collection Tales of Fire and Bronze, and I've given this classic a fresh shine just for you. So let's settle in, let's step into a world of folklore, and let's unveil the magic. The Woodfolk. Pan lived a life far merrier than any of the other gods. Loved by shepherds, country folk, and the wild creatures of his domain, he ruled over flocks and herds, woods and rivers, and all things untamed. Yet he bore this great kingdom without a care, as light as the shadow of a leaf when he danced. His days were spent in laughter and music among his kind, the fauns and the satyrs, that is, whose pointed ears and small horns made them seem more beast than man. Like Pan, they basked in the sun, played their pipes in the shade, and feasted on wild grapes and nuts, gladly shared by the squirrels. The woods were never truly empty. A lonely traveller might believe himself alone, but the trees and rivers whispered their own stories, and many who wandered there were once humans transformed by fate or the gods' will themselves. Some had been cursed and changed against their will, while others had been granted a gentler fate, to leave behind mortal worries and join the carefree world of Pan, living in harmony with the earth. Take Dryope, for example. She was once a carefree young woman. Then one day, while walking among the trees with her sister Iole and her baby, she plucked a lotus flower, only to find that it was no mere plant, but a nymph in hiding. Blood dripped from the broken stem, and Dryope's heart filled with horror. But it was too late. Before her sister's eyes, she took root where she stood, slowly turning into a tree. As the last of her human voice faded, she begged Iole to bring her child to play beneath her shade. And so she remained, no longer a mother in flesh, but perhaps finding solace in sheltering birds and nesting creatures. Then, of course, there was Echo, a once lively wood nymph who angered the goddess Juno with her endless chatter. As punishment, she was cursed to never speak her own thoughts again, only to repeat the last words of others. One day, she spotted the handsome youth Narcissus wandering the woods in search of his companions. "Come here," he called. "Here," she eagerly echoed, at last finding a way to speak. "Come to me," he repeated, turning towards the sound. "I come," she answered, stepping into view. But when he saw her, he only frowned in irritation and strode away. Echo, heartbroken, wasted away until nothing remained of her but her voice, lurking forever unseen, waiting to call back the words of passers-by. Yet Narcissus himself was doomed to love a mere illusion. One day, leaning over the still waters of a brook, he glimpsed a breathtakingly beautiful figure gazing back at him. A water nymph, he thought, longing for him in silence. Again and again he leaned closer, but each time his touch shattered the image into ripples. Desperate, he pleaded with the lovely creature to speak, to reach for him, but it only returned his own longing glances, his own tears. Consumed by this hopeless love, he remained at the water's edge unmoving, until at last he faded into the delicate flower that now bears his name, forever bending towards its reflection in the stream. Then there was Clytie, a maiden who adored the sun god Phoebus Apollo. Day after day she gazed after him, watching as he journeyed across the heavens in his golden chariot. So steadfast was her devotion that she became a sunflower, her face forever turning to follow the path of her beloved god. The forest was indeed full of such tales. Daphne transformed into the laurel tree, Hyacinthus, once a radiant youth, reborn as a flower after a tragic accident. Even the simplest weeds were not without their own whispered stories. Yet some voices in the wilderness were not merely the echoes of lost souls, but were the wisdom of the gods themselves. Hidden in caves and ancient groves, the oracles spoke to those who sought guidance, kings and wanderers alike, who travelled great distances to hear their fate revealed. Temples were built around these sacred voices, where mortals would listen in hope or fear, waiting for the gods to answer. But of all the stories told among the woodfolk, none was more famous than Pan's own sorrow and the gift that arose from it. It's said that one day, while roaming the forests of Arcadia, Pan caught sight of a beautiful wood nymph named Syrinx. She was swift and graceful, a huntress in the service of Diana, and to Pan she was as radiant as a bird in flight, wild, untamed, and utterly captivating. Eager to speak with her, he called out, but the moment Syrinx saw him, his wild hair, his bright eyes, his little horns, she recoiled in fear. Without a word, she turned and fled, her feet barely touching the earth as she darted through the trees. "Wait!" Pan called, running after her, but his hooves clattered against the ground, and the sound only drove her on faster. Through the glades and across the hills she ran, with Pan always just behind. Finally, she reached the edge of a great river, her escape cut off. Desperate, she cried out to the water nymphs, her friends beneath the surface, "Help me, hide me, take me away." The nymphs in their pity acted swiftly. Just as Pan's arms reached for her, she vanished. Where Syrinx had stood, there was nothing but a cluster of tall reeds swaying gently in the breeze. Pan stared in dismay, his heart pounding. He reached for the reeds, but they only bent beneath his fingers, whispering in the wind. A sigh of sorrow escaped him, and as it did, the reeds shuddered, releasing a soft, mournful melody. Pan paused. He ran his fingers over the stems again, and the sound returned, a delicate, trembling song. Hope flickered in his eyes. "Is this your voice, Syrinx?" he murmured. "Shall we make music together?" And so he carefully gathered the reeds, cutting them into hollow tubes and binding them side by side. He lifted them to his lips and played, and the melody of Syrinx filled the air, a song of loss and longing, carried on the wind. From that day on, shepherds and wanderers learned to shape the reeds into their own pipes, and the sweet, sorrowful music of the pan flute has echoed through the hills ever since. And there you have it. Today's tale was adapted from a story told by Josephine Preston Peabody in Old Greek Folk Stories Told Anew, published in 1897. As you know, I love unearthing these forgotten gems and giving them new life. I like to keep folklore alive for fresh eyes and ears. If you want to find out more or read some of the stories in my books, then you can go to Amazon or any good bookstore, and there is a link in the description below and at the bottom of the screen. If you're curious about Tales from the World's Firesides, or me, Clive Gilson, the story guy, then head over to clivegilson.com. Before you go, also, I would love it if you could hit that like button. It really does help more folks discover these stories. And if you haven't subscribed, then please consider it. New tales drop every week. Until next time, though, keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, and stay inspired. Take care.